父なる神様、今日もありがとうございます。Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day. I pray that this video will bring the honor and glory due to your name, will point others to you by revealing just some of what you've done for your kingdom in Japan. I pray for the missionaries still there and for the Japanese people that they would be receptive to your word. I ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. Hello everyone, and welcome to the long-awaited Japan video, where I talk about everything I did in Japan and reflect on my time spent there. I have on screen a table of contents with everything I'll be covering today. I'll be rereading all my prayer letters and seeing how God answered some of these prayers, filling in with stories I might have missed along the way, and then I also have content at the end that happened after my last prayer letter. But before I jump into that, I want to thank everyone who made this possible. Last April, I asked to raise around $5,000 in support, and in less than 3 months, we met that goal. Just rereading through my old emails, trying to remember all the dates and stuff, I was just amazed and moved by how long ago this journey has started, and just how amazing and blessing God has been this whole time. God is good and gracious and is the provider. If you want to know how you can keep supporting me and my missionary efforts, I'm not raising support right now, but you can like, comment, and subscribe on this video so you can be notified next time I venture back out into the mission field. Or you can always support other missionaries on the field from OMF or from any other organization. And with that said, I can get started with the video. Once again, thank you all so much, and especially thank you for all the prayers before, after, and during this trip. God's blessings have surely been poured out this summer. I'll start with my first prayer letter. I'll just go ahead and read it and talk as I'm going along. So I wrote my first email Monday, July 3rd. It said, "Hello everyone. Today, Monday, is the last day of my first full week in Japan. I could say so much about my short amount of time here so far, but I'll try to stick with the important and/or interesting things here. I took a plane from Dallas to Los Angeles and from Los Angeles to Tokyo on a 12-hour flight. I might have dozed off a little bit, but I could never fall asleep completely during all my traveling. When I arrived in Japan, I was so excited, but I quickly had to go through customs and grab my luggage. I quickly got so stressed out and overwhelmed by everything I needed to do."
She forgot the bed.
I had very little internet access as I tried to look for a SIM card to be in Japan but couldn't find one. I waited in long lines where I thought I could get help booking trains to Hirosaki, but with no luck. Lastly, I was having difficulty withdrawing cash from my bank at the ATM. So, yeah, on my trip here, I just watched a bunch of movies on the plane over and over again. I watched, like, The Last Samurai and A Few Good Men. I might have watched Mission Impossible, I can't remember. I was just watching Tom Cruise movies. But yeah, when I got to Japan, it was just complete chaos trying to go through all the customs, fill out all these forms. I had all my bags that I had to carry everywhere. They were so heavy. And people said that there would be lots of English speakers there, and I mean, sure, there were some people who knew a little bit of English, but not enough to make me feel comfortable, especially when I had no sleep and I was scared and I needed to get to where I wanted to be. So that was really scary. But then I wrote here, eventually I was able to figure out that situation using another card, talking about the ATM. Yeah, the ATMs at the airport were not working, so I just used my mom's card because the one that had all my missionary support funding, that one wasn't working there. And I just followed signs to get through the train stations myself. It took me a full day riding trains and listening to announcements and guessing where I'm going without internet until I got on the Shinkansen, that's the bullet train, to Shin Aomori Station. I couldn't sleep the whole time during that either, but by God's grace I made it to Hirosaki and was picked up by the missionary there and taken home, where I crashed right into bed and slept long and hard. Yes, so it was a miracle just getting there. All the trains, they had announcements that were all in Japanese, and it being so late at night and some of the trains being a little bit less known, especially as the farther away I got from Tokyo. There was less and less English, but with the Japanese I knew, I was able to listen for the town names. I started memorizing some kanji of the town names so I can get from one place to the next. Yeah, the whole time, everyone at home was freaking out, and I was freaking out. We were all praying. I wrote here, it was honestly a miracle I made it there, and the missionaries thought so too, it being so late and it being my first time, and being so young and having no internet connection. None of the other SEIJIN workers went through that experience, and I'm glad they didn't. But maybe next time I can get something like a SIM card beforehand. But I did make it, and I prayed to God through all of it, and also prayed that I wouldn't remember the scariness of getting to Hirosaki, but the comforting rod and staff of the Heavenly Father who guided me there safely. So yeah, it was scary, but I made it, and one of our first devotions there was about the comforting rod and staff of God who takes care of us. I wrote here, the next morning, things started right off the bat. For a few days straight, I was already put to hard work carrying wood and waxing floors and even putting together a bike shed. So yeah, day one, I woke up, had breakfast or whatever, and then we were already moving wood. And it was so hot over there, and everything was so muggy. So it sucked, but I just having to keep reminding myself that, you know, I'm doing this for the missionary. But everyone else staying at the church here seemed so much older than me, so much better at Japanese, and understood more of the daily schedule than me, so I did feel overwhelmed even then, not knowing what kind of expectations the missionaries had of me. So yeah, that was very scary. Like, there was a routine for everything, and everyone had weekly chores, and we'd have to take turns making meals and things, and take turns doing the devotions. And I didn't have any kind of orientation talk to any of that, so I was scared I would miss something, but it was all okay. Regardless of that, I wrote, I started making friends, started acclimating to the way things run around here, and started picking up Japanese from everyone. In getting to know everyone better, I eased up a lot more and began to realize that my role was not an important one, me carrying all the wood and stuff. Even if I wasn't holding classes or preparing Bible talks like everyone else was, the mundane cleaning made it possible for others to do so, freeing them up. I wrote, in ministry, there's no job too small, especially in this culture where things need to be very clean and respectful to welcome in guests who likely have never even seen a church before. So it had to be beautiful, and we need to show that we treated the church with respect so they can as well. I wrote, on Friday, I got to take part in English Cafe, where students come to practice their English with native speakers. Not many people came because it's testing season, I wrote, in the Japanese schools, but it was nice anyway. I got to meet some kids just about my age, and we talked about worship that night. So at the English Cafe, they'd come sit down, we'd have a snack or two, and we'd just talk, practice our conversation. And we would have a Bible talk, we'd have a game, and we'd talk about a word, Christian word that might be a hard thing to understand, a hard thing to translate. So that night was worship. I wrote, it was a surprisingly complex idea to talk about with someone whose idea of religion is far from the Western understanding. Thankfully, where I couldn't communicate, other Japanese helped out. And on Sunday, we met early to discuss in English what the service was going to be about. How it was about how God's agenda is greater than our own. Then we held it for everyone coming in Japanese. Most of the people in church were not Christian, but were just there to check out what the weird foreign religion was like. It was difficult for me to realize that. We held a lunch for the congregation afterwards, and they stayed all day, which is a normal practice. They have lunch, and they keep in fellowship, and they hang out, and they don't want to leave. And honestly, at one point during the day, I had to run back to my room and spend some time in prayer because I was just so saddened by the lack of faith in the wonderful people I saw, I wrote here. Because yeah, I was getting to know these people, and usually when I'm in church, there's a decent assumption that the person I'm talking with is a Christian, but not here. And even as we were talking about God and enjoying these meals together, it was just really sad to think that it might take a lifetime for this person to come to know Jesus Christ personally. So I begged God when I ran back to open their eyes to the truth of His Word and to help me learn their language so I could speak to them more than just some basic sentences. That was another thing that annoyed me, where I felt like I was powerless to help them out because I couldn't speak their languages. So all my hard experiences here like that, I found the other workers shared too. When I wrote this on my day off, I said we talked about it, and I was really encouraged by everyone else's stories and advice. We all wanted to see God be praised here in Japan. We all found comfort just watching the people live and play and interact and love each other. In such a spiritually dark place, it was important we connected with each other. And yeah, I made friends right away with my buddy Malachi, and he would be the guy I do everything with for the next couple months, so I'm going to be mentioning him a lot. But also made friends with all the other guys too. And yeah, just hearing that everyone else, their stories, and they're all like very similar to mine about why I wanted to come to Japan. It was comforting. Then I spent a paragraph in this email about the fun things I did on my day off. So we'll take a break from the serious things real quick and talk about some fun things that I did there. So I wrote, we all went out on Saturday to a place to eat okonomiyaki. So that's like a savory pancake meal, but I think that savory pancake meal is a bit misleading of a term because it actually is nothing at all like a Western idea of a pancake. It just is in the shape of a pancake. What okonomiyaki actually is, it has cabbage, meat, seafood, sauce, AOMORI, katsuobushi, mayonnaise. This is all the stuff that Google is telling me what's inside it. But yeah, it is nothing at all like pancakes. But it was good. And we had to make it ourselves at the restaurant. So we sat down, there was the grill. And I don't have any cooking experience, and even less so Japanese cooking experience, so I failed pretty bad. It was all a tasty mess, but I couldn't get it to stay in shape, and I just keep ripping it up. But I gathered everything on my plate. On Monday, I went to a ramen shop, and that was amazing. I mean, the ramen that we have in America is nothing at all like what it's like in Japan. It's especially not the cup ramen where it's just the noodles, but like the ramen with the pork broth and the seaweed and the eggs and everything, the full meal. That was so good. To order ramen at this place, you used a vending machine to make a selection on the menu. There were vending machines for practically everything in Japan, and even in restaurants like this, you would use the vending machine to make your order, get a ticket, you pay there, and then the waiter will come and pick up your ticket later at your table. Then at this place they also offered some free rice, and we had gyoza. And yeah, at that point, that was the best thing that I had eaten in Japan, and I said I wanted to go there again, and I did. I went there several times. But even all the rest of the Japanese meals I wrote here, have all been great. And I had to use chopsticks for the whole 2 months, and I've gotten really good with them. I used a fork for the first time just yesterday, yesterday at the time of recording, and it was pretty weird. I brought my chopsticks just so I could keep using them if I wanted to. After ramen, we went to a bookstore, a 100 yen shop. It's like a dollar store, but even cheaper, and a second-hand shop. And everything was so cheap at the 100 yen store and the second-hand shop, and I was walking around with a ton of money in my wallet that I had from raising support, so I had to control myself. But I did get a couple souvenirs for people. And then at the end of the day, we went to an onsen, and that was my first time going to the onsen. That's the Japanese hot spring, like a hot tub, but way, way, way hotter. And obviously I cannot take pictures in there, but it was great. And there was a sauna in there, set at 90 degrees Celsius, And as soon as I walked in there, all the water on my body instantly evaporated and turned to sweat, and I looked just as wet coming out. That's definitely the hottest I've ever been in my life. But then also during this first week, friend Mike, he was riding the bike home that night after we parted, and he fell into a ditch and was hospitalized. And I mean, I only learned about it once I got back home and connected to the internet after we separated, and we all prayed for him, and he made a recovery pretty quickly, and he's already smiling and everything. Of course, this was a long time ago, and now he's completely back to normal. He had to eat liquid things for a while, but we can praise God that he is okay now. That was an answer to prayer I asked at the time when I wrote this email, and I even messaged many people to pray for him, so that is God answering prayer right there. Saved Mike. I also asked for prayer that first letter, just to thank God that I made it safely, that my language skills were improving. I prayed that I would have patience in all the culture shock and the hard labor. And then I prayed that God would bless Hirosaki Nozomi Church and their ministry there. So the church I was at was called Hirosaki Nozomi Church. That Nozomi means hope. So it's like Hirosaki Hope Church. One of the ladies at the church who teaches Japanese, she told me that my name in Japanese, instead of Aizaku, which is what Google told me, she told me that the Isaac in the Bible, they call him Isaku, so I took on the name Isaku that first week instead of just Isaac. So on that first letter I signed off as Isaku. And as this video continues, as the prayer letters continue, I'll give you more updates on all the fun things that I did with my name while I was there. But moving on, in my second prayer letter, I was already leaving from Hirosaki to go to Aomori to be there 4 weeks at camp. So I arrived in Hirosaki, spent there maybe like a week and a half, maybe almost 2 weeks. But I was told right away that I would be going to Aomori to do children's camp stuff. So at Hirosaki, my days off were Mondays when I was setting letters, and so then it changed to Wednesdays in Aomori. I wrote, so this past week in Hirosaki has been painful. The weather has just been unforgivingly hot, working all day long outside and going through several applications of sunscreen a day. That is true. It was crazy hot, and the humidity was like at 80, and the temperature itself was 90 degrees. And I was working my butt off the whole time, carrying things, building things, sweating through things. I said here, we carried wood, carried scaffolding, chopped wood, painted walls, took water breaks. And a few days straight of doing that, and I was running out of energy fast, unable to keep pace without some proper rest. So yeah, I was getting sore, starting to get tired of everything. I started to beg God for some mercy while I worked and strength to keep going. So even as I was walking things back and forth, or like cutting the grass, I was just praying to God that He would give me each step because of how tired I was. And I made sure to eat as much as I could during our meals and got seconds and thirds. But God answered my prayers in a couple ways. And first, He obviously kept me going through all this work. Second, He got me a rest when I did go to Aomori, because we didn't have things to do there right away. The plan was I'd be there for 4 weeks, training for camp, preparing for camp, and then doing the camp, facilitating the events. So I left with my friend Malachi to get there on Saturday. So I said goodbye to the rest of the Hirosaki crew, but was with Malachi, my buddy. Even with all the hard work I was doing there, I wrote that I still appreciated my time in Hirosaki, and I was glad I could be of service to the church there, and it prepared me well for the ministry going forward. And I remember even saying later that if that wasn't my introduction to Japan, I probably would not have had the strong work ethic that I did going forward, because we were always on the move there. But at Aomori Christian Center, I was staying in a cabin with a few other guys. There were 5 guys there, including Malachi, and then my friend that I met in pre-field training in Colorado. I think I did send messages about Colorado back when that happened in June of this year. But here in Aomori, we were out in the woods under all the trees. It was still pretty hot. It was slightly cooler, and we also had shade under the trees. But because it was out in the wilderness, we didn't have any showers, so we went to the onsen every day and were reimbursed for it to stay clean. Yeah, so I quickly got used to going to the onsen all the time. Then all of our meetings there that we did with the rest of the staff, we would open and close every day with reading the Bible, with praying, and we took turns sharing all our testimonies. There were 11 workers in total, so for a morning and night we'd share a testimony till we got through all of them. And then we sung the Lord's Prayer and Apostles' Creed every morning and night as well, until it was stuck in our heads, and then we kept singing it long afterwards. And I was a big fan of the missionary there and looked up to him quite a bit, I wrote here. His name was Luke Elliott. He was so cool. I would love sitting with him at the table and talking, like asking him questions about his own theology or about his story. So many reasons to admire him, but also he was just a fun guy from Canada. We got along, had a very similar sense of humor. He had a wonderful wife and 4 kids that were all fun to be around. They were always in the background doing some crazy things. The Sunday service in Aomori, that experience, we hosted churches in our camp building. That first week I was there, we held the church service, had a barbecue after with teriyaki chicken. Some of the church members even started singing karaoke all of a sudden, and karaoke is very popular in Japan, so that was fun and unexpected. And during that first week there, it was my 20th birthday. We had cupcakes and ice cream, and even during that first week, it was other people's birthdays as well. We had someone turning 23, I think, someone turning 24, and then there was a birthday later in the month. All the July birthdays coming together. But the 20-year-old birthday is very special in Japan because that's the coming of age. That's when you become an adult in Japan, traditionally speaking. And there's a festival for that, where they celebrate everyone turning 20 years old. But I missed that by a long way. And then I said in my last letter how it made me feel small and insignificant not knowing Japanese like everyone else, and not having all these Bible degrees yet. Everyone had so much more degrees and were so much older. And this was a nagging problem that was bothering me the whole time, just feeling so tiny. But I started to realize that it was actually a blessing that I was able to do all this so young, that I have a head start in all these things. I'm getting to know the language and culture in Japan at this age. So I changed my perspective and began thanking God for all this opportunity. And instead of being so upset about not having experience, I was thanking Him for me getting experience in the ministry. Before we left to go to Aomori, real quick, and on Tuesday we got to celebrate the 4th of July. All the other Americans, we had a little grill and then set off some fireworks in the back. We also saw some museums, and there was a lot of hype building for the Nebuta Festival. The Nebuta Festival happens early August in Aomori Prefecture, and I was excited that I'd be able to get to see it, so there'll be more coming up on that later on in the video. But in Aomori, in the middle of the woods, there were a bunch of animals. They had a monkey problem in the village. The monkeys would come and threaten women, children, or take food or stuff. So Luke Elliott, the missionary that I really liked there, he would defend the village himself from the monkeys. He'd have airsoft rifles or big shovels that he'd yell at them. I will include a link to a video to watch, a funny little video he made about defending the place from monkeys. He made a long time ago. You might be able to recognize his style of humor and maybe why I've been able to connect with him so much. And then I asked for prayers for that time for the upcoming children's camps, and then thank God that I was being brought closer to Him. So I'll continue on to the next prayer letter.
Hey, Mr. Miyagi, look! Look!
You beginner luck.
Alright, my third prayer letter. I wrote, "Hello everyone, it's time for this week's update. This one will be quite short, because we haven't been busy." I wrote, "Last week we hosted a church in our camp building and subsequently had a barbecue with them." I think that's the one I mentioned. But then this week we got to visit their church and take part in their worship service. Their church is called HIROSAKI Church. So I believe that is accurate. We drove all the way to Hirosaki for the Sunday service, had it with them in their building instead of ours that time. We also had a dedication service for the building at camp before everything starts happening next week. Yeah, that was on a Saturday. We prayed for the building. It said they will have a bigger dedication service once the site is completely finished with this construction, but we figured we could pray for the camps in advance anyway. So yeah, they had a building that they used for many years, but then it was determined that the city came in and said it wasn't up to all their standards, so they started building a new building, and it's pretty much done, but I mean, there's always construction. It was entirely usable for our purposes, but there might have been junk and like the kitchen wasn't finished, so we just had a miniature dedication service. And then Monday, the first round of campers would arrive. They would be TCK kids, third culture kids, or missionary kids from other OMF missionaries, and I think some from non-OMF families too, just from in the area from in Japan, and even from other nearby countries as well. They came to AOMORI for this camp that's been going on for years. So we've planned their schedule in English, and then immediately after they leave, the next day would be the next camp, and that would be kids camp for Japanese. So the TCK one, that was gonna be in English, but the Japanese kid camp for younger kids, that was entirely in Japanese, just from the Tohoku area where we were at, from Aomori. And then the last camp, we had 3 camps planned. The last one was teenagers in Japanese, so just like the other one, but for older kids. It was 3 days TCK, and then 3 days kids camp, and then 3 days teen camp. So it was a very busy, every single day for 9 days in a row. At the time of me writing this email, there were 2 break days since the last one. On the first one, we climbed Moya Hills, and I was proud of myself for keeping up with the head of the group the entire way up, I wrote. We had to climb the mountain 3 more times after that, because we went up with each camp on the second day. That was one of our big events, was climbing up Moya Hills. The view at the top was very beautiful. You could see the entire Aomori city, even though it was like an hour away. You could see mountains, you could see the ocean. Also on Moya Hills, we had gravity-powered carts, like just little carts we rode down the mountain a couple times. I said that was scary and dangerous, but I had a lot of fun, and I was the fastest driver once I knew the course. The first time I went slow and was very careful, but then the second time I was zooming past everyone. We did a hike through nature in the rain. It was raining, but that did not stop us. We kept going around, and I took a ton of pictures that I have showing.
Hello.
どれにいたしましょう。
We'll take that one and that one.
わかりました。でもこれは作り物ですので、どうぞお店の中の方へいらしてください。
Well, that one and that one.
でもこれは作り物で食べられません。どうぞお店の中の方へ。
That one and that one.
これでございますね。どうぞ。
Come, Barkley.
And then this, I will remember this for a long time. We had an all-we-can-eat buffet for lunch one day where you grill your own meat at the table. So we just grab meat off the shelf, grab some sides, and then go grill our beef and our pork right where we sat. That was so good. It was expensive, but it was a worthy experience. Then we also went to the beach and we made pancakes over the fire, explored the city a bit, and I made instant friends with everyone there. So with all the 11 people there, they were all such strong personalities, and it was so funny just getting to interact with everyone. There was a guy from Germany, there was one from Singapore, from Taiwan, and Malaysia, a girl from Canada, then I think the rest of us were American. So yeah, that week before camp set up, we didn't have a whole lot of structured things we did. We set up tents, we chopped up woods, and we made schedules and game ideas. Me and Malachi were put in charge of the program for the camp, so we had to come up with the schedule, what games we would play, and then we were going to be the ones that got up on stage and did all the funny things. So I'll probably include some footage of that, but we were the guys that come up, say that it's dinner, say that it's breakfast, the duo. Then others, they had roles like the kitchen staff that made our food, and then we had my friend from Colorado, Raphael, he was taking pictures and video, and then we had the German Gerval, he was outside making the tents and the wood, and then still others, they were in charge of worship for all 3 camps. I wrote here that I thought in the past I might want to do long-term ministry in the larger cities of Japan, where I would have an easier time acclimating to the culture, like in case there's someone in a bigger city that could speak English. But as I was there in Aomori, I was thinking I might not need that. I could just jump right in to Aomori Prefecture or something in the future. It might be worth it, because the lands are very rural and entirely unreached by the gospel. I wrote, no missionaries ever think to come there because it's so remote and unknown. So there's a lot of churches being planted in Tokyo and then in Sendai, but then people usually fly right over Aomori to get to Sapporo, where there's a bunch of churches on the island of Hokkaido. So I thought it might be worth it to come here. I thought I would love to join Luke there in the future. I had thoughts of maybe being a missionary somewhere and then just spending my summers in Aomori helping out with the camp, but then I also proposed the idea of just being there all year, because there's stuff they do outside of the summer as well. I'll have to keep thinking and praying about that, but there is a possibility that I would want to go back to Aomori for the future. I asked this time to pray for the upcoming camps and the children that we hope to reach, and that God will continue to reveal how He wants to use me, like about Aomori and stuff. And then it was at this time I made friends with a Japanese friend there. Oh yeah, there were also, of course, Japanese workers. And she helped me come up with some kanji for my name, Isaku. So the first character of the kanji she explained to me as like a teacher or a prophet of God, and then the second was like a builder or workman. So I like to say that together Isaku means that I'm building God's kingdom. And that's just such a cool idea, so if you ever see me sign my name like that as Isaku, you know what that means. It's my Japanese name, and it is so cool, just like the Isaac in the Bible. So then we just have a couple more. The next week after that, I didn't actually send an update because it was right in the middle of camp. I had no time to write anything. But after that, I had some. I believe it was just right after the last teen camp ended. So I'll go to that one now. Alright, so in this letter I wrote that, yeah, I had no time to write the last week, and it was sad because this was my second to last letter that I planned to write. I said I would rest a while, but then eventually chronicle all my experience all in this YouTube video, to be patient for that. So now here it is. the wait, I hope, has been worth it. So I wrote our first camp went very well. Me and Malachi were the MCs for the entire thing. We started out with some funny skits we wrote, including a Mad Lib skit, What About the Camp Rules, and one silly puppet show that included the Big Bird doll I brought for pictures. So yeah, I brought a Big Bird. You'll probably see plenty of pictures of Big Bird. That's because one of my mom's childhood favorite movies was Big Bird Goes to Japan, and so she got me a Big Bird toy to bring to Japan to take lots of pictures with. So he became a star at camp. We had worship and Bible sessions all throughout the camp, and I had devotionals with my group of younger kids I was a camp counselor for, I wrote here. So Malachi, he focused on the older boys, I was with the younger boys, and we had girl camp counselors. So we would sit with them before bed, either sleep with them out in the tents or maybe inside the old building. We had plenty of games, and like I mentioned, each camp we went to Moya Hills on the second day of each camp. Yeah, I climbed to the very top every time. Normally we would go up and we'd scatter people up and down the mountain, so in case kids got tired and gave up or went back, we'd have staff members around based on their needs. But I got to go to the top each time and see my favorite view. Then the second camp was the kids' camp, meant entirely in Japanese, and that was a struggle because the first camp, me and Malachi, we were doing all of our stuff, and we figured we might be able to just speak through a translator or something for the second camp. But the reality was our roles had to be much different than we thought. We were pretty much powerless and even detrimental to the camp by not being able to speak Japanese. So the missionary kids, their cousins were there, so they were allowed together, and then they could all speak English. And that was a problem because we didn't want them to. We wanted to have a space for all the other Japanese kids who couldn't speak any English. We didn't want them lost or confused. We wanted them to be able to participate with the other kids as well. So speaking English was bad. It was a little bit of a mess that first camp. We were all stressed out, and we just threw all these jobs on our Japanese staff members. So then we decided at the end that we needed to make some big changes before the last final team camp. So for the last one, me and Malachi, we just did background stuff. We set games up, we helped with the wood and the tents and everything. We gave the rest of the kids the needed space for all their Japanese fellowship. I wrote this support letter during the camp, I believe it was, so that's because I had some time to myself where we didn't need to do anything. I was able to get this one out. Thankfully, that last one turned out to be a huge success. And it's not like the second one was a complete failure or anything, but we definitely improved for our last go. I wrote in my paragraph about our fun break day that we wanted to plan a karaoke night. Yeah, we kept wanting to go to karaoke, but we never had the time to. I was really sad that I was about to go back to Hirosaki Nozomi. I was gonna miss all the new friends that I made. Before our last goodbyes, we did have the Nebuta festival that I mentioned earlier, so even though I was going to go back to Hirosaki in a couple days from then, we would have a short reunion for the Nebuta festival to celebrate together. But even before that happened, on Sunday evening when we had a little bit of a break, we went to a fireworks festival. We were at the beach earlier that day and then met a couple Japanese guys that told us that there were going to be fireworks. So we came and saw the fireworks over the beach. So we were sitting along the coast. They were launching over the ocean. The hanabi, they're called in Japanese. And that was one of the most beautiful fireworks experiences I've ever seen. The only one that beat it was probably the one in Boston Harbor, but still, this was pretty close. Fireworks in Japan was definitely going to be unforgettable. I'm really into fireworks, they're really into fireworks. It's usually seen as a romantic thing sometimes, but it was all beautiful. But yeah, speaking of Moya Hills, I wrote in this letter about the favorite spot that I keep mentioning. I always like going back to. I just stared over at the countryside, saw all the mountains in the distance, and I took pictures, but I said to myself that the pictures could never see what my eyes could see when I see the beauty of Japan. So it was kind of useless and I just had to remember it for myself. But then I also thought what God's eyes must see when he sees Japan, and what he has planned for the land, and how much he loves it even more than I do. So I was really moved by that, and just thought about the trees and the grass and the butterflies and the rocks. So I wrote that I smiled knowing that he has promised to bring his kingdom to earth, so every knee will bow and every tongue confess his name, as far as the east is from the west, from America to Japan. So yeah, it was then that I remember I quoted The Last Samurai and said that I found a peace there that all of us seek, yet few of us ever find. Through this trip to Japan, I do believe that God has affirmed my calling here, and it was on top of this hill that I was able to rest in that thought and just marvel at his creation. So I wrote to pray that his kingdom will come, that what he wants will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I wrote to thank God for what he's done in the kids' lives at camps, and pray that their curiosity about the church will not die. Pray for the staff. I wrote, especially the Japanese staff that were taking on all the work. And then I wrote, pray that I will always remember to live our lives on mission even when I'm not here at camp. So yeah, these kids, the Japanese ones, they're mostly non-Christian, I think. The missionary kids, they were obviously Christian, and they challenged me in my own faith because of how strong and mature they were. I was like, I was not this mature when I was their age. But just seeing how much they had gone through already and the braveness they had along with their parents' faith, that was challenging. But then even with the Japanese kids, seeing their response to worship to the lessons, I would sit in on the lessons and have my friend Aika translate for me, and we'd all listen to her translate in the back. And like I said, just seeing the Japanese kids respond in worship was a powerful sight. So pray that the seeds will continue to grow. I have included on the picture of this email a picture of Hirosaki Castle that I forgot to mention that I went there. I also went to a school festival in Hirosaki, a high school festival, and it looked just like how everything I imagine a Japanese school would be, just from video games and anime and stuff, all the halls and the uniforms. There was a band that played, there was food that was being served. That was pretty cool. And then the castle, most people were saying that it's so small it's not worth going to, because the actual full castle had been burned down a long time ago, and so this was only just one tower of it technically. The rest of the castle did not exist anymore. But I wanted to go, and I still think it was cool, even if it wasn't the full size. I loved being there because I really liked the old architecture. I liked studying the samurai and their history. And this made me feel like I was right in the Sengoku era or the Edo period. Then the last development on my name that I include here, again, my friend Aika helped me do this. I could write my name Rittenhouse transliterated in Japanese, but fully translated, it could be Kishimiya, which would hold the same meaning as Rittenhouse does in German. So there's written house, so written like a rider or a knight, then a house like a noble house. So the Kishi in Kishimiya is referring to a knight or a man on horseback, even specifically one of European or Germanic origins. And then the Miya, comes at the end of last names commonly to show that it might have come from an important family name or refers to a palace. So Kishimiya is not a transliterated but translated version of my last name. Obviously, I cannot use that last name unless I got a legal name change, probably. But if you ever see me sign off on there as like a pen name or as the name of a character in a book I'm writing, you'll know where that comes from. So Kishimiya, my other Japanese name. Alright, and then moving on is my very last prayer letter that I sent out. I had already left AOMORI at this point. I was spending the week in Hirosaki. I wrote a bunch of papers of debriefing for OMF for the different places I was at, started doing all my reflection papers, and really just began to prepare my heart to return back to America and to digest all the things that I had done that summer. I went out to lunch with the coordinator there, talked with him, thought about what I was going to do for this YouTube video. That week was very uneventful though, other than me sitting around and doing all these things. Because the missionary there that was normally so hardworking and everything, they were all taking holidays. So they had family come, they were going on trips, because it was the Nebata festival. So there wasn't a lot of ministry opportunities we had. Everything was canceled for holidays that week. People were gone. But we did have a Sunday service, and we did get to celebrate the Nebata festival. The festival, I wish I had pictures and video of myself in it, but I didn't have my phone because I was actually inside of the festival, the Hanato dancer. So we showed up and I got an outfit, I got the socks and the sandals, and I had my phone in my bag with all the rest of my stuff that was left inside the building. But I did get to join the Nebata festival. That was like 2 hours of marching around the city behind giant floats, dancing, and I'll probably show some footage of what it looks like, the Hanato dancing. And they're all chanting, Raseira, Raseira. Then at the end of the parade, because I was towards the front of it, so at the end I was able to sit and watch the rest of it as it all caught up. It was so hot right in the middle of the crowds and all the dancing the whole way through. So I got out, drank a ton of water, and then enjoyed the rest of the parade with my friends, saying goodbye one last time. And then for those of you who don't know, the Nebata Festival is basically a celebration of wartime successes. It's kind of vague. Historians can't pin down an exact origin of the festival, from what I could find. But it goes on for a whole week, and each town and city in Aomori Prefecture has their own unique floats that they show, based on just their geography, their history, and then also based on the physical characteristics of their city as well. So for example, there was the city that had narrow streets, so their floats were traditionally built up higher more than wider. In the beginning of the week, the floats will have like men going off to war, and then the back of the float will have women crying. And then as the week progresses, there'll be more gory depictions of like samurai battling each other, communicating a whole story. I did get to see some of these floats in the museums that I went to back in Hirosaki, and even long afterwards, there were floats parked in garages and things that you could find if you walk far enough on the street. I wish I got to keep the Hanato outfit, but it was only rented. I did get to keep the socks and sandals, so I can just add that to my kimono outfit. At the end of this prayer letter, I included a bunch of links to videos of some of the worship songs we sang at camp, a video, just a fun one we did with the staff, recreating a high school musical song. And then at the end I said, thank you so much for reading and for supporting me over these last couple months. I cannot believe the time has passed this fast. This is the end of my emailing, but pay attention to YouTube, and of course I will probably continue the conversation with many of you over a long time to come. So yeah, even in this video, the video is not over yet, but I'm probably leaving out so much, just reading, trying to remember. But I could talk about endless stories about what I did at camp, the funny shenanigans my friends were up to, and I could go on and on about what God has taught me. So for those of you who know me personally, I would love to keep this conversation going in the future. Then I wrote, pray that I will make it home safely, and praise God for His magnificence and His plan that started over 1 year ago when I watched Silence and started to read the Bible. So yeah, obviously I made it home safely, and yeah, thank God that I came into contact with the movie Silence. So I don't know if I've ever put into a video my testimony of why I've come to Japan, but it basically went like this. So I've always just really liked Japan, and when I watched The Last Samurai, I got even more interested in their culture. Started watching Kurosawa films, some video games and anime as well. Japan was one of the coolest cultures I could find, and just their respect for nature and for each other, their honor, and especially their Bushido code really attracted me. If something was awesome, it was probably Japanese. My best friend in high school, we used to joke that we were racist because we thought that the Japanese were so much superior. Obviously, that was all joking. But anyway, you get the idea. I really like Japan. And then I heard about this movie called Silence that I made a video on. It was about Christian missionaries to Japan, and it had my favorite actors in it. Andrew Garfield and Adam Driver and Liam Neeson, and my uncle had it on DVD, so I thought this is gonna be awesome. It's literally about God in Japan, my two favorite things. And so I watched it, and if any of you have seen the movie, you know that it's a very depressing movie, very hard to watch, about how the missionaries failed there and how they apostatized from the faith. Really how they screwed up the Japanese perception of Christianity for many years to come. And I was just so offended by the movie. I expected it to be awesome. I expected it to have a happy ending, but it did not. It just had such a terrible, sad ending. So I thought, surely in the 21st century, with Japan's economic success, after 2 world wars, surely their spiritual condition is in a better place right now in the modern day. So I looked it up, and nope, the numbers of evangelical Christianity were less than 1%. And that was devastating news. I was upset about that for a long time, and I said to myself that I have to do something about that. Because I had too much respect for the Japanese culture, and I said the one thing that they're missing is Jesus Christ, and so if I can do something to help that, I will. So I started finding online Japanese courses to learn, and I started digging into the Bible more, which I wasn't doing at the time. And my brother, he was like, I'll give it 2 weeks. You're not going to keep up with this. You're just hyped from a movie. But a year and a half later, here I am. I've been to Japan. I'm starting my 2nd year of college, studying the Bible. And God has affirmed my calling to go to Japan. And at the same time has transformed my life just by speaking to me through His Word that I was so eager to dig into then, and has forever changed the course of my life. So yeah, that was my final prayer letter. Before I move on to the next section, I do want to mention something happened after I sent out this prayer letter. I wanted to get a kintsugi bowl as a souvenir. There was an art studio in town that I walked to and set up an appointment to make a kintsugi bowl myself, because they weren't selling any, but they were going to offer classes. If I brought a broken bowl, they would teach me how to fix it using the kintsugi techniques. This is not sponsored by them, by the way. But kintsugi is kind of a popular idea in the West, especially in Christianity, because the metaphor really writes itself. So in kintsugi, you repair a bowl using traditional techniques. You put gold lines in it, and then instead of throwing away broken pottery, you end up with something new and arguably more beautiful than what you had before. And the metaphor in Christianity that we like to attach to so much is that Jesus takes our broken parts and makes us whole. He sanctifies us by His blood so that we can become a new creation in Him. So I went and I made the bowl, and I explained this to the lady who was teaching me. She was very fascinated by the idea, loved the idea. She was not a Christian, but really even the small witness there that she would seek God. I walked to this art gallery myself, and it was raining, so she offered to drive me back. And that's when I got to show her the church, and she thought it was very beautiful, and now she knows where it is. I told her to come on Sundays. So I don't know if I will ever see this person again, but I do hope that they will continue to seek God, that a seed will be planted there, that their curiosity would grow, and that they would see that their work, what she does, her work in the pottery and the art, that it does reflect some of God's beauty. Also, right before I came back to America, we had a tiny little local Nebuta festival that I made a video about. We had snacks afterwards, so you can check that out. And then also, on the day that I was going to fly back to America, I woke up at 3 a.m. I really like talking about the sun and the imagery of Japan being the land of the rising sun, so I wanted to see the sunrise while I was in Japan. So I got up at 3 a.m., walked out to the rice fields, and then watched the sunrise. And I have it recorded. I'll keep it playing, probably. And then that very same sunrise, I followed all the way back to America and then watched it set at the airport. I also want to say, a year ago, when I was looking into Japan, I found the place Towada. According to some census data, Towada didn't have any Christians but one Christian who didn't have a church for miles to go to. So I told my brother, one day I'm going to go to Lake Towada, meet this one Christian, give them a place to worship God in. And that was a whole year ago, and I only realized just now as I got back to America and looked at the map that I went to that very lake, Towada. That's where some of the pictures were from. And no, I didn't plant a church there, but it shows me just how far I've come since then. And so we come to the end of my video. Thank you all for watching, and again, thank you all so much for supporting me and making this possible. I got back to America on the 14th of August, and it took me a full week to make this video. That's 3 days recording, 2 days editing audio, and another 2 days editing just the video. And that doesn't include all the days in between where I've been doing schoolwork and stuff already back into college. I haven't even shown all the pictures I have, but that would have probably been impossible to do in one video, and this has already gone on so long. So like and subscribe to keep hearing from me. I've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. And also keep praying for me as I continue to seek God's kingdom. I'll see you in the next video, and I hope you've enjoyed this one. Arigatou gozaimasu, minasan.
した